So I want to start using this metaphor that you've seen before. This picture that you see here is from Mauna Kea, which is the tallest mountain in the world. That argument, versus the Everest is a conversation for another day. But I'm using this picture because um, I want to use this metaphor to help us sink into mastery education a little bit more. And mastery education often is the education that colonial formal institutions abide by or follow. And it's very much about finding the right way, or as people have said before, or perhaps they don't say it like this openly, but it it follows the metaphor of try to conquer a peak, try to climb a peak. It's very much driven by dopamine hits of getting things right, of getting a good grade, or of being validated in hierarchies of who has done it better or who has crafted the best argument, and things like this. It really operates through a sense of empowerment, and that is often masked through the idea of self-expression or finding one's true voice. But that true voice is really so that you can be located at the height or at the top of a peak. And it's often very focused on a cognitive layer. So in the last session, Dino and Camila spoke about very much this cognitive layer and the relationship or the ecologies between different knowledges and different epistemologies. And so this is one way to approach education or approach learning. And here is another image. I think this is perhaps an illustration or an AI generated image of the same mountain. But here we can see parts of it that are underwater. And in this way, we can think of depth education perhaps as an invitation into going into the depth of an ocean. And it's an ocean full of uncertainty, of volatility, and of unknown, right? And depth education is asking us to engage not only with the cognitive, but with the affective and with the relational. When I say relational, my hands go to my gut. And I'll speak about this a little later or some more. But through depth education, perhaps we can start, instead of thinking about conquering this mountain that we saw before, or this one that is here, or climbing it, or trying to understand it or describe it or measure it, perhaps it's an invitation to relate to it, and to relate to it through its depths too. And this relationship is to relate to it as a relative, as a living entity. But in order to do that in a way that is honest, we need to first develop the capacity and the dispositions, certain capacities and dispositions that in the collective we call, for example, developing a psychoanalytic distance. So this refers to having a healthy suspicion of our own narratives, and these narratives that are colonial narratives, but that have been masked by a desire to do things in a certain way. So for example, I might say, oh yes, of course I can relate to this mountain as a relative. I see them as my grandfather or grandmother. But there is a level of rigor that is required for us to look deeper and deeper and deeper into how is this relationship, or what are the colonial learned ways of being that are mediating this relationship that I think is already a relationship of respect, of reverence, and of kinship. But that if I look deeper, there might be other colonial tendrils going in and mediating this relationship. In the Hospiting Modernity book, Vanessa writes the idea that modernity is faster than thought. So when we think we're already doing it, often is a red flag, and we're invited into some humility and looking back into, am I already there? Am I really already relating in this way? And it's a difficult balance, but this is part of the psychoanalytic distance that we're being invited into, tapping into through depth education. Because it is only through looking at these narratives, being able to take a step back and look at them as opposed to relating to them, that we can perhaps have a little more clarity into understanding or into unlearning these ways of being that we want to unlearn. And this next image is the same mountain, but here we can see an aerial image of the mountain range. So here I'm trying to expand a little this metaphor of relationality into the idea that colonial understandings say that if we change the narratives or a cognitive layer of narratives, then the rest will follow, right? And this is very much what mastery education is trying to tell us and what formal systems of education try to tell us. But Indigenous researchers, both that are part of our collective and other scholars and other thinkers and feelers, say that it doesn't work like this at all. Instead, they've told us that change comes from the gut and then goes into the heart and then goes into the brain. And the brain really makes the computations or the logistical decisions necessary to make things happen. But the brain really is following the orders of the gut. And a healthy gut is a gut that is biodiverse and that is entangled. So one thing that depth education is trying to do is to declutter the noise or compost that shit so that we can connect with a sense of visceral accountability. And when I say visceral, I mean the gut. Visceral, de las tripas, from the gut. So that kind of accountability guides us to make decisions that are not based on transactional calculations for our own benefit, that usually comes from the cognition or the mind, but instead to do what is needed at any given moment. So it's not what we want, and perhaps not what we need as individuals, but what is needed. And that in some ways is a compass. We speak about it also sometimes as a compass that needs a lot of recalibration, because our modern ways of being have miscalibrated this compass and thus created the situation that we're in now.